Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues Episode 4, the NIMBY white-collar class of New England, the segment of the population that really wants social reform but not anywhere near them. And this is a common feature, I think. It's one of the things that New Englanders need to own up to a little bit. Those that have perhaps made it, as opposed to those that are like in the working class or something, less averse to these things. What you get in Vermont, out-of-staters may not always comprehend this. This is sort of the nanny state component, sort of like the Maryland approach of people living in this region. There are people in this state who will tell you, for instance, oh, we need green energy. Climate change is a huge problem. We need renewables. We need wind farms, especially. For some reason, people here are convinced that solar won't work in our climate, like despite all evidence to the contrary, and we need to scarify our hillsides with windmills. And every time people talk about wind farms, this happened over and over. It's like, I can't remember which township it was. For like 10 years, they fought having a wind farm nearby. People are telling them, well, you'll pay less in electricity. It's renewable. You don't have to worry about the whole Vermont Yankee thing because you'll be generating your own power. And it's all good. Well, what's the problem? They said, well, we don't want it where they're proposing it. The prime location that they identified for the wind farm would have been within view of a lot of these landowners, and they didn't want to look at windmills. They didn't want to see windmills on the hill nearby. It would be not so scenic. Part of me understands that. One of the big tourist draws of our state is it happens to be scenic. Wind power does have its own complications, for instance, chopping birds' heads off. Not necessarily the greatest thing that could go wrong with a power source, as opposed to like a nuclear meltdown or a coal seam fire. But I understand why some people would be upset, but the big thing that they had a problem with wasn't the environmental impact or, erosion on the hillside or anything like that. It was, we don't want to look at the windmills. Put them elsewhere. Where are you supposed to put them? Addiction treatment, another great example. This happens too. We want a new addiction treatment center. Oh, you're putting it there? We don't want it anymore. It's too close to our home. We're afraid that some addict is going to attack our kids or something like that. Like there aren't people that are addicted wandering around in your neighborhood anyway. Considering the percentage of the U.S. public that's addicted to opiates alone, statistically speaking, in the Rutland metro area alone, there should be about 250, 300 people that are addicted to opiates. And we're a small town community. And that's assuming that the very, very lowballed estimate of opiate addiction, as far as people that are willing to admit they have an addiction problem, that's assuming that that's realistic. I'm here to tell you, I don't believe it for a second. I think it's twice that. I think it's closer to 3 or 4% of the U.S. population that's at least somewhat addicted to opiates. I think when you roll all the other forms of addiction up, you're getting a good, 5 or 6% of the population that's addicted to something that's considered illicit. That doesn't even take into consideration alcoholism. It doesn't even take into consideration people that are under an active prescription. They're addicted, but they keep getting it refilled, and so they don't really fall under that general umbrella for statistical purposes. Yeah, it's a lot more people than... somebody was telling me that the opiate addiction crisis was some sort of a ruse by the government to increase immigration. Oh, we want to bring people in that, they're not addicted or because of economic reasons or something. How did those two things correlate whatsoever? And they said, oh, it's only like 1%, 1.5% of the population that's addicted to these things. Okay, so millions of people are addicted in this country to this specific class of material. And you're not even just talking about that, you're talking about others. And we try to build an addiction treatment center. It's the same idea as building a jail. Everyone agrees the jail is overcrowded. We need better conditions, and we need to modernize things, expand it. We need a new treatment plant for sewage. We need a new this. We need a new that. We need better road systems, but don't put the road near me. We need a new park, but it shouldn't be here. We need new anything, and people don't want it around them. Now, this isn't just a problem in Vermont. I'm not saying that that's the case. But I have noticed it's more prevalent. Having been here and been in other places, the outcry over some public works thing that is desired to be built, the outcry over that seems to be higher with some of the sort of middle and upper middle class people in a state like Vermont as opposed to a state where there's less of an income disparity. It'd be the same as San Francisco. Can you imagine people, they're spending millions of dollars on a row house, and you say, well, we want to put an addiction treatment center on this block. Everyone around that block will cry bloody murder because they look at their home as like, oh, well, it's worth millions of dollars. It'll only be worth $10 if you put this place in because it'll be considered blighted or something like that. Part of it boils down to economics, and land values in Vermont happen to be high, so you get a lot of this. Somebody's like, yeah, I'm living here now, but ultimately, like, if I want to retire to Florida or something, I want to get a good amount of money for my land. The problem is that under Vermont's sort of legalese, it's actually relatively easy for people to drag the state or the township through court and prevent them from doing things. They didn't even do that to one another. We've got cases in this state, someone wants to, like, hook up renewable energy on their home, and one of their neighbors cries foul, and they drag them through court for years, and they have to pay all sorts of money just to wage a fucking legal battle. Usually they just say screw it, and they let the issue go. Okay, I guess I don't get my solar cells. I guess I can't put this little windmill in my backyard. You know, it's not bothering anyone. It's not scarifying the view. I can't do this. I can't plant this tree. I can't cut that tree down. And then the state gets involved, and it's almost worse. You find some threatened species on your property. You're supposed to tell the state, oh yeah, there's like lady slippers growing on the little swampy patch in my backyard. Yeah, you probably shouldn't tell them. They might declare your property an endangered creature habitat and tell you what you can and can't do there. And so people in New England tend to be a little bit more closed off about their personal lives, maybe to people around them. They don't like these ostentatious shows of, hey, I've got green energy or something like that. And part of that is just the polite northern New England culture, very English and French extraction, as opposed to some of the other groups culturally that amalgamated into U.S. culture. But it can be a problem, a big problem, when you're trying to tackle the opiate crisis. When you're trying to tackle, are we going to have green energy? Are we going to treat sewage? It's even like Vermont Yankee. Most of the people complaining about it were in that general region. I happen to take their side. I don't think nuclear power is a good idea. I see it as basically you're sitting next to a ticking time bomb if there's any form of instability, and it ends up melting down. Maybe a fully modern style plant would have been fine. This thing was leaking tritium into the waterways. And a lot of people just came out and said, oh, don't worry, it's not a health risk. The plant leaks constantly and has like old wooden framing inside of the exhaust system and everything else. Don't worry about any of these things. Like, you're totally fine. Here, we're handing out iodine to everyone who lives nearby, but they don't get nervous at all. It was a problem. But then there's the not in my backyard sort of thing. And it's particularly prevalent among those who are the haves as opposed to the have-nots. I like to think that because I was raised below the poverty line, even though now I'm doing well, if somebody were to say we want an addiction treatment center in the Styx-Hexenhammer neck of the woods, I wouldn't oppose it. So, okay, who cares? Who cares? There are probably people in the neighborhood that are already addicted to painkillers anyway. Why am I going to fucking care? If there's more than 100 people in an area, even according to the relatively low-balling statistics, there should be one or two of them that are on opiates at any given time. At least. It's probably a lot higher. And then you got these other drugs that you have to talk about too. I remember one time, I won't say where, but I will say it was many years ago, when I was in the woods, actually. Again, I won't say specifically where. I ran across like a duffel bag that had it had bags that had obviously at one point contained cocaine, spoons and little packets that I assume had to do with heroin, pill bottles that had the labels ripped off, weed bags and stuff with just the stems left, and things like that. It's like somebody was having quite a party out here, probably for a long period of time. By the way, this particular location was completely overrun by Irene, so that gives you an idea of how many years ago this was. So it's no longer extant. As far as I know, nobody's toking up crack out there anymore. But you run across these things. People just hide their habits, and you wouldn't necessarily know. It's not like they're going to the census comes by and they say, "Are you addicted to opiates?" "Oh yeah, I'm an opiate addict." Yeah, you can go tell the state police that I shoot heroin constantly. Like, they're gonna do that. You don't have enough trust and cooperation, and the not in my backyard people, when they sort of stigmatize those that have problems, it doesn't improve the situation at all. Not even remotely. And then they ramble. It's coming from all of these, like, gated community trust funders are the ones harping on the fact that Vermont needs to install more green energy, and then when you propose that it be anywhere near them, they don't want it. We've got some solar panels in this area of the state. I think there are 3 solar fields now just in the metro area. And it doesn't seem that most people oppose them, but I can remember when they wanted to put in the solar field that's sort of behind the McDonald's on Route 4, which is sort of a little bit out of the way of the center of the city, and there aren't as many people there. It's mostly a commercial area, so people don't really live there. Some people were putting up a stink about it, some of the businesses. And this was an empty, like a vacant lot that they were using. They're saying, well, it's basically, at this point, it's been vacant forever. It's blighted. We're not using it for anything. Why don't we turn it into a solar field? And there were people that didn't want them to do that. It's behind several businesses. They can't even really see it readily from most parts of the road. It's not disturbing anybody. It's next to like another empty area that's basically just like swamp. And some people didn't want it there. They didn't want to see solar panels for some reason. I think they should just pay people to mount them on the roofs, like they should subsidize that, so we don't have to make actual solar fields. They should have turned the vacant lots into like little parks or something like that. Turn it into an orchard. Let people come and eat some apples or something. You know, you wouldn't have a problem. The homeless population of Rutland, which is larger now since the recession, why don't you plant them a nice orchard so they can get some fresh fruit or something like that? Wouldn't that be a kind thing to do? And then you put the solar panels on the business roofs. Well, they're problem solved, and during a blackout, they can still marginally operate. That's really going to help people. Like, what if you have some massive problem, some disaster, you get like thousands of injured, and the hospital gets overwhelmed, and nobody else has power? Well, then you have some places where you can temporarily set up shop if you really, really need to, like in Walmart or something like that. It just works. It's a good thing to do. It's like some people, they assume like I'm far right, so I must like oppose green energy. And no, absolutely not on either count. I support green energy. I just think it's being used in a dumb fashion. And the NIMBY folks ultimately wouldn't be able to do much about like solar if you were just having it installed on like existing business roofs and stuff like that, because it wouldn't be an eyesore. It's just establishing something totally innocuous on an existing structure. It doesn't take up any extra room. The business feels good about things. It's certainly going to help with tourism. Because they say, oh, Green City Burlington, Green City Rutland, stuff like that. It just works. But the NIMBY folks, they try to get in the way of anything they can. They want every social reform known to man, especially if it ups the tax rate. But when push comes to shove, they don't want to allocate funds if the site's anywhere near them. Oh, you're gonna put up this power station. That's good. We keep having brownouts. Oh, you're putting it up within a mile of where I live. I don't want to see that shit. I don't want to have to drive by the transformers every day. Oh, windmills? Yeah, that's good. Green energy, #1. Oh, you're putting it... I can see it from my backyard? Hell no. Now I'm going to sue the state because I don't want to see it. Put it in someone else's community, and in every community they go to, they find that there are these not in my backyard sort of folks. It's just sort of the way that it works. And it's prevalent in Vermont, I think, based on my understanding of sort of the people that tend to be in the upper crust of Vermont. A lot of them aren't from Vermont originally. They come from some other community, and they feel like, well, I've made it, and now I'm in nice scenic Vermont, so I don't want to have to see the windmills in the treatment center or something like that. I like to think that the average Vermonter is more open-minded, honestly, than that. That's about all. Peace out.